What if a billionaire CEO, wandering his silent mansion late one night, stumbled upon his newest, most unassuming employee, not shirking her duties, but poring over medical textbooks, her eyes burning with a secret ambition that would shatter his preconceived notions and irrevocably change both their lives. This is a story of unexpected discoveries, hidden dreams, and a connection forged in the quiet hours of a shared, unspoken determination. The moonlight filtered through the grand, arched windows of the Sterling estate, a sprawling mansion nestled in one of Boston's most exclusive neighborhoods. Alexander Sterling, weary after another long day of high-stakes meetings and corporate power plays, walked through the silent hallway towards his private study. He needed to review some crucial documents before surrendering to sleep. At 35, he had built a formidable real estate empire, a kingdom that had not only brought him immense fortune but also a coveted, almost mythical, place in the city's elite high society. The profound silence of the night was suddenly, unexpectedly, interrupted by a barely perceptible sound, a faint rustling emanating from the direction of the vast, gourmet kitchen. It was nearly 2 a.m. Puzzled, a flicker of unease stirring within him, Alexander altered his course and moved silently towards the source of the sound. The kitchen door was slightly ajar, a thin sliver of soft light escaping through the narrow opening. Who could possibly be in the kitchen at this hour? He wondered, approaching with a cautious, almost predatory stillness. As he gently pushed the door open, he was met with a sight that genuinely surprised him, a scene so out of place in his meticulously ordered world. Elena Hayes, the quiet, unassuming domestic employee he had hired just 3 months ago, was seated at the massive marble island, surrounded by a formidable stack of thick textbooks and scattered notes. She was so completely engrossed in her reading that she hadn't even noticed his presence. Alexander observed her in silence. Elena, her dark hair pulled back in a simple, practical ponytail, chewed on the end of her pencil as she read with an intense, unwavering focus, a stark contrast to her usual reserved demeanor. The weariness was evident on her face, etched in the faint shadows beneath her eyes, but those eyes themselves, dark and intelligent, shone with a fierce, undeniable determination. "Elena?" he finally asked, his voice a low murmur in the otherwise silent kitchen. The young woman startled, jumping to her feet immediately, her movement so abrupt that she accidentally knocked over the coffee cup beside her notes, its dark contents spilling across the pristine white marble. "Mr. Sterling, I was just..." Elena stammered, her face flushing a deep crimson as she nervously tried to clean up the spilled coffee, her hands trembling. "Relax," Alexander said, approaching her, a surprising gentleness in his usually brisk tone. "I didn't know you studied so late." Elena lowered her gaze as she hastily gathered her books, her embarrassment palpable. "I'm so sorry, sir. It won't happen again. It's just that during the day, I don't have any time, and I thought I wouldn't bother anyone here." Alexander picked up one of the heavy textbooks Elena hadn't managed to quickly hide. "Gray's Anatomy," he read on the cover, his eyebrows rising in surprise. He flipped through a few pages, filled with meticulous annotations in the margins, complex diagrams circled and highlighted. "Are you studying medicine?" he asked, a genuine, unexpected curiosity in his voice. Elena nodded, still visibly flushed. "Juanita, I'm in my 3rd year, sir. I study at Harvard Medical School in the mornings and work here in the afternoons." Alexander looked at her with new eyes, a newfound respect dawning. He had always seen Elena as an efficient, discreet employee, a silent, almost invisible presence in his grand, empty mansion. He had never once wondered about her life beyond its opulent walls, her dreams, her aspirations. "How do you manage to do both?" he asked, handing her back the heavy textbook. "With a lot of effort, sir," she replied, a small, fleeting smile momentarily illuminating her tired face. "It's not easy, but it's worth it." Something in her quiet determination, her unwavering resolve, touched a sensitive chord deep within Alexander. He himself had fought relentlessly to reach his current position, though his circumstances, admittedly, had been far more privileged, his path far less arduous. "And why hadn't you told me about this?" he asked, sitting across from her at the massive marble island, gesturing for her to do the same, a silent invitation to share, to connect. Elena hesitated for a moment before slowly, cautiously, sitting back down. "I didn't think it was important, sir," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "It doesn't affect my work." "Of course, it's important," Alexander stated, his voice surprisingly firm. "And you're clearly exhausted. When do you even sleep?" "Enough," she responded, though the dark circles under her eyes told a different, more honest story. Alexander glanced at the rest of the textbooks piled on the table. Biochemistry, physiology, pharmacology. All of them were worn, their pages dog-eared, probably purchased secondhand. A stark contrast to the pristine, untouched first editions that lined the shelves of his own vast library. "We'll talk about this more calmly tomorrow," he finally said, rising to his feet. "It's late, and we both need to rest." Elena felt a wave of relief wash over her. She hadn't been reprimanded, at least not yet. But she was also deeply worried about what this unexpected conversation might mean for her precarious employment. "Good night, Mr. Sterling," she said as she finished gathering her things. "Good night, Elena," he responded as he walked out of the kitchen. That night, lying in his luxurious, king-size bed, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about Elena, about her fierce determination, her quiet resilience. There was something about her, an inner strength, a hidden fire, that had impressed him profoundly. For the first time in a very long time, he felt genuinely intrigued by someone far removed from the superficial, predictable world of business and high society in which he usually moved. The morning sun illuminated the sprawling gardens of the Sterling estate as Alexander Sterling stepped onto the terrace with his first cup of strong black coffee. He had slept little, his mind preoccupied with the previous night's discovery. He consulted his expensive Swiss watch, 6:30 a.m. He knew Elena Hayes would already be awake, preparing for her long day of university classes before beginning her demanding shift at the mansion. As if summoned by his thoughts, he saw her hurrying across the meticulously manicured lawn, a heavy backpack filled with textbooks slung over her shoulder. She was dressed simply but neatly in jeans, a crisp white blouse, and comfortable walking shoes, a stark contrast to the severe, functional uniform she wore while working. "Elena!" he called out, his voice carrying across the dew-kissed grass. The young woman stopped, surprised, and hesitantly approached the terrace. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling. I didn't expect to see you awake so early." "Normally, I'm not," he admitted with a rare, almost sheepish smile. "Are you heading to the university now?" "Yes, sir. I have a pathology class at 7:30. "And then you come directly here to work?" Elena nodded. "I usually arrive around 2 in the afternoon, when my classes are finished." Alexander frowned, a genuine concern etching lines on his usually impassive face. "And when do you study?" "Mostly at night," she replied, a faint blush coloring her cheeks as she remembered their late-night encounter in the kitchen. "And on Sundays, which is my day off." Alexander observed her closely. In the clear morning light, the exhaustion on her face was more evident. Yet so was her natural, unassuming beauty and her unwavering, quiet dignity. "Sit down for a moment," he requested, gesturing to the wrought iron chair opposite him. "I have a proposition to make to you." Elena left her backpack on the ground and sat down, visibly nervous, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Don't worry," Alexander reassured her, sensing her apprehension. "I'm not going to fire you. In fact," he paused, a thoughtful expression on his face, "I want to help you." Elena's eyes widened in surprise. "Starting today, you'll work part-time," he continued, his voice firm but kind. "The same salary, the same benefits, but only in the afternoons. Your mornings and evenings will be dedicated entirely to your studies." "But, sir, I can't accept that," Elena protested, her voice filled with disbelief. "It wouldn't be fair for you to pay me the same for working fewer hours." "Consider it an investment," Alexander responded, his gaze direct, unwavering. America needs good doctors, Elena, and I can afford to be part of that investment. Elena stared at him, struggling to understand his motives. Why would you do something like this for me? You barely know me. Alexander leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers. I recognize determination when I see it, Elena. You have an inner fire that reminds me of myself when I first started, when I had to fight for everything I achieved. He paused, a self-deprecating smile touching his lips. The difference is, I had every advantage, every privilege, while you're fighting against all odds, with a quiet courage I deeply admire. A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with unspoken words and a burgeoning, unexpected connection. Besides, Alexander added with a charming smile, last night, I saw your anatomy notes. I have a strong feeling you're going to be an excellent physician. Elena felt tears threatening to spill, but she fought them back, determined not to appear weak in front of him. I don't know what to say, she finally murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Say you accept, he responded, his voice gentle, and that you won't study at 2 in the morning anymore. A slow, radiant smile spread across Elena's face. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. I don't know how I can ever repay you for this. By graduating with honors, he replied, his own smile widening. And please, when we're not in work hours, call me Alexander. Elena nodded, still trying to process the incredible, life-altering generosity of this enigmatic man. And now, Alexander added, glancing at his watch, you'd better go or you'll be late for your class. Elena stood, picked up her backpack, and headed towards the garden gate. Before leaving, she turned back to him. Thank you, Alexander, she said, testing his first name, the sound surprisingly natural on her tongue. As he watched her walk away, her step a little lighter, her shoulders a little straighter, Alexander wondered what had truly impelled him to help her. Was it simple generosity, a fleeting whim? Or was it something more, something deeper, something he wasn't quite ready to admit, even to himself? What he did know, with an undeniable certainty, was that in the 3 short months Elena had been working in his house, he had never truly seen her before. And now that he was beginning to know her, to understand her quiet strength, her fierce determination, he felt an inexplicable, compelling need to be a part of her life, her struggle, her dreams. That morning, as the sun ascended over the bustling city of Boston, something profound was changing in the cold, sterile Sterling estate, something neither of them could yet fully comprehend or predict. What do you think of Alexander's unexpected generosity? Is it a genuine act of kindness, or does he have a hidden agenda? What if an unexpected act of generosity paved the way for a unique mentorship, blurring the lines between employer and benefactor, and sparking a connection that transcended the rigid boundaries of their disparate worlds? The Ramirez Clinic, a small but respected medical practice, was located in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood in Cambridge, a world away from the opulent grandeur of the Sterling estate. Elena Hayes arrived 15 minutes early for her appointment, her heart a mixture of nervousness and a burgeoning, hopeful excitement. A month had passed since Alexander Sterling had changed her work schedule, and the difference in her academic performance was already remarkable. For the first time since she began her grueling medical studies, she felt like she could actually breathe, like her dream of becoming a doctor was truly within reach. Elena Hayes, the receptionist called out, her voice friendly. Dr. Ramirez, a kind-faced man in his late 50s, greeted her with a warm smile. Ah, yes, you're the student Alexander has told me so much about, he said, gesturing for her to take a seat in his comfortable, book-lined office. You know Mr. Sterling? Elena asked, surprised. We were classmates in preparatory school, before he went off to study abroad, Dr. Ramirez explained, his eyes twinkling with a hint of amusement. He contacted me a few days ago. He's very interested in your training, Elena. He said you're brilliant, and that you need practical experience. Elena felt a complex mixture of gratitude and a lingering confusion. She hadn't known Alexander would go to such lengths to help her. I'm looking for an assistant for Saturdays, Dr. Ramirez continued. The work is simple, organizing files, assisting me during consultations, learning basic procedures. Are you interested? Elena couldn't believe what she was hearing. An opportunity like this was invaluable for any medical student. A chance to learn directly from an experienced physician. Of course, I'm interested, doctor. It's exactly what I need. Excellent, he responded, a pleased smile on his face. You'll start this Saturday. And don't worry about Alexander. You can thank him in your own way when you're ready. Leaving the clinic, Elena felt overwhelmed, her mind racing. Why was Alexander doing all this for her? The question, persistent and unsettling, lingered in her thoughts, a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. That afternoon, while serving coffee in Alexander's study, she finally found the courage to ask him directly. Why did you contact Dr. Ramirez? She asked without preamble, her voice surprisingly firm. Alexander looked up from his documents, surprised by her directness, yet a subtle, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Because he's an excellent physician, he responded naturally, and because I knew he could help you. But why are you taking so much trouble for me? Elena pressed, her gaze unwavering. No one does so much for someone without expecting something in return. Alexander put his pen down on the desk and looked at her intently, his dark eyes searching hers. Is that what you think, Elena? That I have some hidden motive? I don't know, she responded with a raw honesty. In my world, things don't work like that. Your world? He asked, a genuine curiosity in his voice. Yes, Alexander. Your world and mine are vastly different, she stated, her voice quiet but firm. In yours, doors open with a single phone call. In mine, you have to break them down with sheer force of will. Alexander rose from his chair and approached her, his presence suddenly filling the opulent study. For the first time, Elena was acutely aware of his physicality. Tall, elegant, with that undeniable aura of confidence that only true privilege can bestow. You're right, he admitted, his voice surprisingly soft. Our worlds are different, but that doesn't mean they can't meet. Their gazes locked for a moment that seemed to stretch into an eternity, an unspoken, electric current passing between them. Elena was the first to break eye contact, flustered by the sudden, intense emotions that surged within her. Thank you for the opportunity with Dr. Ramirez, she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. I won't disappoint you. I never thought you would, he responded, a genuine warmth in his smile that made Elena's heart skip an unexpected beat. As she left the study, Elena mentally chided herself. She couldn't allow herself to feel anything for Alexander Sterling. He was her boss, her benefactor, a man from another world, a world she couldn't belong to, or so she desperately tried to convince herself. What if a glittering party, a world away from your own, became the unexpected backdrop for a shared moment of vulnerability, revealing a hidden sanctuary and a connection that defied all social barriers? Could two souls, from vastly different worlds, truly find common ground in the quiet intimacy of a shared secret? The party at the Sterling estate was in full swing. The elite of Boston society had gathered to celebrate Alexander Sterling's latest successful real estate venture, a towering skyscraper that would redefine the city's skyline. From the bustling kitchen, Elena Hayes observed the glittering scene, a whirlwind of expensive gowns, sparkling diamonds, and hushed, influential conversations. Although it was no longer officially part of her job to assist at social events, she had agreed to help out tonight as a special favor to Alexander, a testament to their evolving, yet still undefined, relationship. You look different, a deep voice said from behind her, startling her. Elena turned to find Alexander Sterling himself, impeccably dressed in a dark tuxedo, his gaze sweeping over her with an intensity that made her blush. It's probably because you don't usually see me in a waitress uniform, she responded with a shy smile, adjusting the simple black apron over her borrowed white blouse. It's not the uniform, he said, stepping a little closer, his voice a low murmur. It's something in your eyes. They sparkle differently tonight. Elena felt her cheeks flush, a warm, unfamiliar sensation spreading through her. In the past 2 months, Their relationship had subtly shifted. It wasn't just gratitude she felt when she was with him anymore, and she suspected it wasn't just generosity that motivated his continued support of her medical studies. There was something more, something unspoken, growing between them. Probably just the exhaustion, she joked, trying to lighten the suddenly charged atmosphere. Saturdays with Dr. Ramirez are intense. Do you regret accepting his offer? Alexander asked, his gaze searching hers. Not at all. It's the best experience I could possibly have. Yesterday, he let me suture a patient for the first time. The pride in her voice was evident, and Alexander smiled, a genuine warm expression that reached his eyes. Come with me, he said suddenly, taking her hand, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through her. I want to show you something. Before Elena could protest, he was already guiding her through the bustling kitchen, towards the back of the sprawling mansion, far from the glittering chaos of the party. They arrived at a discreet, unassuming door Elena had never noticed before, hidden behind a service staircase. What is this place? She asked, her curiosity piqued, as Alexander pulled a small, antique key from his pocket. My sanctuary, he responded, his voice a soft whisper as he opened the door. As they stepped inside, Elena gasped. It was a small, hidden library, its walls lined from floor to ceiling with leather-bound books. A comfortable, worn leather sofa, an antique writing desk, and a single soft lamplight completed the cozy, intimate space. No one knows about this place, Alexander explained, his voice barely audible above the distant hum of the party. Not even my housekeeper. It's where I come when I need to escape the world. It's beautiful, Elena murmured, her gaze sweeping over the rows of books, her fingers gently tracing their worn spines. You remind me of myself when I was your age, Alexander said, observing her, a thoughtful expression on his face. Always fighting, always trying to prove my worth. But you were born into wealth, she countered, a hint of skepticism in her voice. My family's money, yes, he admitted, his gaze distant, but not their respect. My father never believed I could manage his companies. I had to earn it every single day, every single deal. Elena had never seen him like this, so vulnerable, sharing a part of himself he kept meticulously hidden from the rest of the world. Why are you showing me this, Alexander? She finally asked, her voice a soft whisper. He stepped closer, his dark eyes reflecting an emotion Elena didn't dare to name. Because I want you to know me, he responded, his voice raw, honest. Not the millionaire, not the boss. Just me. The silence between them was charged with unspoken tension, with unexplored possibilities, with a connection that defied all logic, all social barriers. Alexander, A sharp knock on the hidden library door shattered the moment. Alexander? Are you in there? A female voice called out from the other side. Alexander's expression instantly changed, his carefully constructed mask of composure snapping back into place, as if he'd been jolted from a dream. It's Sophia, my business partner, he explained quickly, his voice once again brisk, professional. I have to get back to the party. Elena nodded, a sudden, sharp awareness of the impropriety of their situation washing over her. She, the domestic employee, hidden away in a secret room with her powerful, enigmatic boss, while a party filled with important, influential people continued without him. You go first, Alexander suggested, his voice a low murmur. I'll leave in a moment. As Elena silently slipped out of the hidden library, she felt that something fundamental, something irrevocable, had shifted between them. A crack had appeared in the formidable wall that separated their disparate worlds, and neither of them, she suspected, was entirely sure they wanted to repair it. Back in the bustling kitchen, as she served champagne flutes on silver trays for the liveried waiters, Elena found herself smiling, a genuine, unforced smile. For the very first time since she had met Alexander Sterling, she allowed herself to consider the impossible. That perhaps, just perhaps, the vast, seemingly insurmountable abyss between their worlds wasn't quite as unbridgeable as she had always believed. What if the quiet strength you've cultivated began to inspire those around you, even as a powerful matriarch's discerning gaze turned towards your improbable connection with her son? The small house in the working-class neighborhood of Dorchester contrasted sharply with the opulent grandeur of the Sterling estate. Elena Hayes opened the door, weary after a long day at the university, followed immediately by her shift at Alexander Sterling's home. "You're finally here," Mariana, her younger sister, exclaimed, jumping up from the worn sofa to embrace her. At 16, Mariana was the spitting image of what Elena had once been. Vivacious eyes, an easy smile, and an intelligence that shone brightly despite their challenging circumstances. "I brought food," Elena said, showing her a bag filled with still-warm tacos. "How was your exam?" 98 out of 100, Mariana responded with pride, her face beaming. "The teacher said I could apply for a scholarship to the Polytechnic High School." Elena smiled, a wave of warmth spreading through her, feeling that all her relentless effort, all her sacrifices, were truly worth it. Since their parents' tragic death in that devastating accident 5 years ago, her sole, unwavering objective had been to ensure Mariana had the opportunity she herself had been forced to fight so hard for. "I'm so proud of you," Elena said, hugging her sister again, her voice thick with emotion. Mom and Dad would be too. As they ate dinner at the small kitchen table, Elena noticed Mariana observing her with a curious, almost mischievous gaze. "What is it?" Elena finally asked, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. "You're different," Mariana responded, her eyes twinkling. "You smile more, even when you're exhausted." Elena's blush deepened. "It's just that things are going well. The university, work, the handsome boss," Mariana added with a playful, knowing smirk. "Mariana," Elena admonished, though her heart skipped a beat. "It's not what you think." "And what do I think?" her sister retorted with feigned innocence. "I'm just saying that every time you talk about him, your eyes sparkle in a special way." Elena sighed. There was no point in denying the obvious, at least not to Mariana, who knew her better than anyone in the world. "It's complicated," she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "We're from different worlds." "And what does that matter?" Mariana asked with the simple, uncomplicated logic of youth. "If he looks at you the way you look at him." "You don't know what you're saying," Elena interrupted, her voice strained. "Alexander lives in a world where people like us are invisible. What he's done for me, for my studies, it's generosity. Nothing more." "If you say so," Mariana responded, her skepticism evident. "But remember what Dad always used to say, the heart sees what the eyes cannot." Elena smiled sadly, remembering her father, a hard-working taxi driver who had toiled tirelessly to give them a better life, a life tragically cut short. "Speaking of other things," she said, deliberately changing the subject, "Mrs. Ramirez is coming to stay with you tomorrow. I have a night shift at the clinic." "Again," Mariana protested. "I can stay alone. I'm not a child anymore." "I know, sweetheart, but I feel calmer this way," Elena responded gently. "Besides, Mrs. Ramirez adores you." That night, as Mariana slept soundly, Elena reviewed her notes for her upcoming pathology exam. Her phone vibrated with an incoming message. "Are you awake?" It was from Alexander. Elena glanced at the clock. 11:43 p.m. It was unusual for him to write to her so late. "Yes, studying for an exam," she responded, her heart pounding with a strange anticipation. "Can I call you?" "It's important," was his immediate reply. With a trembling hand, Elena pressed the call button. "Is something wrong?" she asked as soon as he answered. "I need you to come to the mansion tomorrow morning," Alexander said, his voice unusually tense. "My mother has returned from Europe, and she wants to meet you." Elena felt the air leave her lungs, a sudden, chilling premonition washing over her. "Your mother? Why would she want to meet me?" There was a moment of charged silence before Alexander responded. "Because I've told her about you," he finally said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "About how brilliant you are, about your unwavering determination, about how important you've become to me." The unspoken words, the raw vulnerability in his voice, hung heavy between them, a fragile, terrifying, yet undeniably alluring possibility. "Alexander, You don't have to say anything now," he interrupted, his voice gentle. "Just come tomorrow, at 10. After hanging up, Elena remained motionless, the phone still clutched in her hand. What did all this mean? And why would the formidable matriarch of the Sterling family, a woman renowned for her pride and unyielding rigidity, want to meet her son's domestic employee? With these unsettling questions swirling in her mind, Elena finally drifted off to sleep, dreaming of colliding worlds and crumbling barriers, of a future she couldn't yet quite imagine, yet desperately, secretly, yearned for. What if a meeting with a formidable matriarch, a woman renowned for her icy composure and unwavering adherence to tradition, became an unexpected turning point, revealing not just a mother's hidden anxieties, but a surprising, almost reluctant, admiration for the very woman who threatened to disrupt her carefully ordered world. Mercedes Sterling, Alexander's mother, observed the sprawling Boston mansion with a critical, appraising eye. At 65, she was still an undeniably impressive woman. Tall, slender, with an aristocratic bearing and a gaze that seemed to constantly evaluate everything and everyone around her. "This house needs more light," she declared, as she poured herself a cup of Darjeeling tea, her movements precise, elegant. "I always told your father that, but he never listened." Alexander Sterling nodded distractedly, his mind miles away. He was far too nervous about Elena's impending arrival to focus on his mother's usual pronouncements. "Are you even listening to me, Alexander?" Mercedes asked, her voice tinged with impatience. "I'm sorry, Mother. I was just thinking about that young woman you've been telling me so much about," Mercedes completed, a sigh escaping her lips. "I sincerely hope she's as extraordinary as you claim." "She is," Alexander affirmed, his voice filled with a quiet, unshakable conviction. "She'll surprise you." Mercedes observed her son with a mixture of profound concern and a burgeoning curiosity. In her 40 years of marriage to Francisco Sterling, a man as pragmatic and emotionally guarded as Alexander himself, she had learned to recognize the special, almost incandescent glow in a man's eyes when he was truly, deeply in love. And her son, her sensible, always in control Alexander, now possessed that very same, undeniable look. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. "That must be her," Alexander said, rising to his feet with a sudden, almost boyish eagerness that further confirmed Mercedes's suspicions. When Elena Hayes entered the grand salon, Mercedes couldn't help but feel a flicker of surprise. The young woman was beautiful, yes, but in a quiet, unassuming, natural way. She was dressed simply, in a light blue dress that complemented her dark hair, low-heeled shoes, and wore barely a trace of makeup. Yet, there was something in her posture, in the way she held Mercedes's gaze, that spoke of an innate, unshakable dignity. "Mrs. Sterling, it's an honor to meet you," Elena said, her voice clear and firm, extending her hand. Mercedes took it, noting the surprising strength in her grip. "My son has told me a great deal about you, Elena," she responded, her gaze unwavering, appraising. "He says you're going to be an exceptional physician." "I hope so, ma'am," Elena replied, her own gaze steady, respectful. "Please sit down," Mercedes indicated, gesturing to the armchair opposite hers. For the next hour, Mercedes subjected Elena to a subtle but relentless interrogation. Her questions sharp, insightful, designed to uncover any weakness, any hidden agenda. She inquired about Elena's family, her studies, her ambitions. To her surprise, the young woman responded with a refreshing frankness and an unshakable self-assurance, showing no sign of servility or intimidation. "And how did your parents pass away?" Mercedes finally asked, her voice carefully neutral. Alexander, who had remained a silent, anxious observer throughout the entire conversation, visibly tensed. "In a car accident, 5 years ago," Elena responded without hesitation, her voice clear, though tinged with a quiet sadness. My father was a taxi driver. A drunk driver hit them on Commonwealth Avenue. I'm so sorry, Mercedes said, and for the first time, her tone softened, a flicker of genuine empathy in her usually cold eyes. Thank you, ma'am. It was difficult, but my sister and I are moving forward, just as they would have wanted. Mercedes nodded slowly, as if she had just confirmed something important to herself. Alexander, she said suddenly, turning to her son, could you leave us alone for a moment? I'd like to speak with Elena privately. Alexander looked at Elena, who offered a barely perceptible nod. Reluctantly, he excused himself and left the salon. As soon as they were alone, Mercedes leaned towards Elena, her gaze intense. I'm going to be direct with you, Elena. My son is in love with you. Elena felt a warm blush creep up her cheeks, but she held Mercedes's gaze, her own heart pounding. I don't know if he's admitted it yet, or if you reciprocate his feelings, Mercedes continued, her voice low, serious. But I know him. I've never seen him like this for anyone. Not ever. Mrs. Sterling, Let me finish, Mercedes interrupted, her voice firm. The Sterling name carries a great deal of weight in this city, in this country. It opens doors, yes, but it also imposes immense responsibilities. For generations, we have maintained a social position that is based not just on wealth, but on strategic alliances with families from our own circle. Elena felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. This was exactly what she had feared, the stark, unavoidable reminder that she couldn't possibly belong in Alexander's world. I understand, she said, her voice filled with a quiet dignity. And I assure you, I have no intention of— No, you don't understand, Mercedes interrupted again, her voice surprisingly gentle now. I'm trying to tell you that that world, that rigid system of alliances and appearances, is dying. My husband lived and died by its unyielding rules. I've spent my entire life trapped within its gilded cage. I don't want the same for my son. For Alexander. Elena stared at her, stunned, speechless. What I want to know, Elena, Mercedes continued, her gaze piercing, searching, is if your feelings for him are genuine, or if you're simply grateful for his assistance. The direct question, sharp as an arrow, left Elena breathless. How could she possibly respond to something she hadn't even dared to fully define for herself? She began, searching for the right words, the honest words. I admire Alexander deeply, his generosity, his intelligence, his unique way of seeing the world. But I'm also acutely aware of the vast differences between us. Differences, Mercedes repeated, a dismissive wave of her hand. Money comes and goes, Elena. Character, integrity, resilience, that is what truly endures. And you, my dear, possess all of those in abundance. For the very first time since she had stepped into the opulent Sterling estate, Elena felt like she could finally, truly breathe. What my son needs, Elena, Mercedes concluded, her voice filled with a surprising warmth, is not someone who will reinforce the cold, gilded walls of his self-imposed prison, but someone who will help him tear them down. Someone exactly like you. When Alexander returned to the salon, he found the two women conversing animatedly about Dr. Ramirez's new community clinic, a project Elena was passionately involved in. Everything all right? He asked, looking alternately at his mother and Elena, a hesitant hope in his eyes. Perfectly, Mercedes responded with an enigmatic smile. Elena and I understand each other very well, don't we, dear? Later, as he walked Elena to the door, Alexander couldn't contain his curiosity any longer. What did my mother say to you when she asked me to leave you alone? Elena looked at him, a serene, knowing smile on her face. She spoke to me about the heavy weight of the Sterling name, she replied, and about the profound freedom that comes when you finally decide that that weight cannot define your life. Alexander observed her, marveling at the quiet, yet profound, transformation he saw in her. She was no longer just the determined employee, fighting against overwhelming odds. She was a woman secure in her own worth, confident in her place in the world. And that place, he was beginning to suspect, with a thrilling, terrifying certainty, might very well be beside him. What if a moment of crisis revealed not just your hidden talent, but also the undeniable depth of a love you never dared to name? Could a shared passion for healing forge an unbreakable bond, challenging societal expectations and paving the way for an unforeseen future? The waiting room of the Ramirez clinic buzzed with a chaotic energy. Elena Hayes moved deftly among the patients, taking information, organizing medical histories, assisting Dr. Ramirez with a quiet, focused efficiency. After 3 months of working there on Saturdays, she had become an indispensable part of the small, dedicated team. "Elena, I need you," Dr. Ramirez called out from the consultation room. "We have an emergency." As Elena entered, she saw a little girl, no older than 8, with a deep, bleeding gash on her arm. Her mother, visibly distressed, tried desperately to comfort her. "She fell on broken glass," the woman explained, her voice trembling. "We don't have insurance, but a neighbor recommended this clinic." "You did the right thing bringing her here," Dr. Ramirez assured her as he examined the wound. "She'll need several stitches, but she'll be fine." As the doctor prepared the necessary materials for the suture, he turned to Elena. "Do you feel ready to do it yourself?" he asked in a low voice, his eyes filled with a quiet confidence. Elena looked at him, surprised. She had practiced suturing several times, but always in controlled situations, never in a real emergency. "Are you sure, doctor?" she whispered, her heart pounding. "Completely," he responded with a reassuring smile. "I'll supervise every step." With a deep breath, Elena washed her hands and put on sterile gloves. The little girl looked at her with frightened eyes. "My name is Elena," she said, her voice soft, calming, as she prepared the local anesthetic. "What's your name?" "Lucia," the little girl responded, her voice a barely audible whisper. "Well, Lucia, I'm going to put some medicine on your arm so you don't feel anything. Okay? You'll just feel a little pinch, like a mosquito bite." With surprisingly steady hands, Elena administered the anesthetic and then, under Dr. Ramirez's attentive gaze, began to suture the wound. Her movements were precise, methodical, exactly as she had learned. "Excellent technique," the doctor murmured, observing her with open approval. When she finished, Elena placed a clean bandage over the wound. "There you go, Lucia. You were very brave." The little girl, who had been holding back tears, offered a timid smile. "Are you going to be a doctor soon?" she asked. "I hope so," Elena responded, feeling a profound, overwhelming emotion. In that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that she was born for this, to heal, to alleviate suffering, to make a tangible difference in people's lives. At the end of her shift, she found Alexander Sterling waiting for her outside the clinic, leaning casually against his sleek black car. "What are you doing here?" she asked, surprised, a warm blush rising on her cheeks. "Ramirez called me," he explained, referring to Dr. Ramirez by his first name, a subtle indication of their old friendship. "He told me about the suture. He said you were brilliant." Elena couldn't help but smile with pride. "It was incredible, Alexander. For the first time, I felt like a real doctor." The pure, unadulterated joy on her face was so radiant that Alexander felt a familiar tightening in his chest, a profound sense of admiration and something far deeper, far more tender. "I want to take you somewhere special," he said suddenly, his voice surprisingly soft. "To celebrate." Elena hesitated for a moment. "I have to go home first. Mariana is alone." "Of course," he replied, his eyes understanding. "We can invite her too, if you like." The special place turned out to be a small, charming restaurant in Xochimilco, on the banks of the ancient canals. From their terrace table, they could watch the colorful trajineras glide through the water as the sun began to set, painting the sky in breathtaking hues of orange and purple. Mariana, Elena's younger sister, initially impressed and a little intimidated by Alexander's presence, soon relaxed and began to chat animatedly about her ambitious plans to study engineering. Elena always says I should aim high, she explained to Alexander, her eyes shining with youthful enthusiasm, that it doesn't matter where we come from, only where we're going. Your sister is very wise, Alexander responded, a warm, complicit smile shared with Elena. While Mariana excused herself to use the restroom, Alexander took Elena's hand across the table, his touch sending a familiar jolt of electricity through her. I've been thinking a lot, Elena, about us, about the future. Elena felt her heart race, a mixture of hope and apprehension swirling within her. For the past few weeks, their relationship had subtly, yet undeniably, deepened. It was no longer just the powerful boss helping his determined employee. There was something more, something profound and meaningful, growing between them. I have to tell you something, Alexander continued, his voice low, serious. I've been offered the opportunity to head the company's European expansion. It would mean moving to Madrid for at least 2 years. Elena felt the world tilt, her breath catching in her throat. When would you leave? In 3 months, he responded, his thumb gently caressing her hand. Unless I have a compelling reason to stay. Their gazes met, and in that moment, all the carefully constructed barriers, all the societal differences and economic disparities that separated them, seemed to vanish, replaced by a raw, undeniable connection. What kind of reason? Elena asked, though her heart already knew the answer. The kind of reason that makes a man reorganize his entire life, Alexander responded, his voice thick with emotion. The kind of reason that gives meaning to everything else. Elena felt tears threatening to spill. It was too much, too fast. Her career, her responsibilities with Mariana, her own long-cherished dreams. I need time, Alexander, she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. This is all so complicated. He nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. I know, and I'll give you all the time you need. I just wanted you to know that, for me, what's between us is real, and that I'm willing to fight for it, if you are too. When Mariana returned to the table, she found her sister unusually quiet, lost in her thoughts, the storm of decisions brewing in her eyes a silent testament to the profound, life-altering conversation that had just taken place. What if the greatest act of courage wasn't choosing between two worlds, but daring to believe they could coexist, forging a new path illuminated by love, ambition, and an unwavering commitment to a shared future? Could two hearts, once separated by circumstance, truly find their happily ever after, not in a fairy tale, but in the beautiful, imperfect reality of a life built together? That night, in the small, quiet house in Dorchester that she shared with her sister, Elena Hayes lay awake until dawn, her mind a relentless whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. On one hand, there was her lifelong dream of becoming a doctor, a path she had embarked on long before Alexander Sterling ever entered her life. On the other, there were the burgeoning, undeniable feelings she had for him. Feelings that, despite her best efforts, she could no longer deny, feelings that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Was it possible to reconcile both worlds, or would she ultimately be forced to choose? The answer, she suspected, with a growing sense of unease, would not be simple. But for the very first time in her life, Elena felt, with a profound, empowering certainty, that she possessed the strength, the courage, to forge her own destiny, regardless of what her circumstances, or anyone else, dictated. The auditorium at Harvard Medical School was packed. Family, friends, and professors had gathered for the graduation ceremony, a sea of proud, expectant faces. Among the crowd, Mariana Hayes, Elena's younger sister, waited anxiously, dressed elegantly in a new outfit Elena had bought her specially for the occasion. Do you think she can see us from the stage? Mariana whispered to the woman seated beside her. Mercedes Sterling, Alexander's mother, smiled warmly at the young girl. Over the past 2 years, she had developed a special, almost maternal affection for the Hayes sisters. I'm sure she can, dear, Mercedes responded, her voice gentle. And she'll be so happy to see us together. In the front row, Alexander Sterling nervously adjusted his tie, his heart pounding with a mixture of pride and anticipation. The past 2 years had been a whirlwind of profound changes, unexpected challenges, and most importantly, immense personal growth. "Elena Hayes," the dean called out from the podium. A thunderous ovation erupted as Elena walked onto the stage to receive her medical degree, her face radiant with pride and emotion. As she shook the dean's hand, her gaze swept across the audience, searching. When she finally found Alexander, Mariana, and Mercedes, her smile widened even further, a brilliant, joyous expression that lit up the entire auditorium. In that moment, she remembered the pivotal conversation she had had with Alexander 2 years prior, shortly after that memorable dinner in Xochimilco. "I can't ask you to give up your dream in Madrid," she had told him, her voice filled with a quiet resolve. "And I can't abandon my career now that I'm so close." Alexander had looked at her then with an intensity that still made her heart skip a beat whenever she remembered it. "And what if we could have both?" he had proposed, his voice filled with a surprising, unwavering confidence. "I can travel between Madrid and Boston. You can finish your degree here, and then, if you want, you can do a specialization in Spain. Would you be willing to do that for me?" she had asked, astounded by his audacity, his unwavering belief in them. "I'd be willing to do much more than that," he had responded, his voice thick with emotion. "I love you, Elena, and I want to build a life with you, by your side. Not above you, not controlling you. With you." Those words, so raw, so honest, had been the true beginning of their new chapter. Alexander had meticulously reorganized his work to be able to spend 2 weeks a month in Madrid and 2 in Boston. Elena had redoubled her efforts at the university, graduating with top honors. Together, they had bought a spacious, comfortable house in Cambridge, where Mariana had her own space while she pursued her first year of engineering. And now, with her medical degree finally in her hands, Elena felt that anything, absolutely anything, was possible. After the ceremony, as family and friends mingled joyfully in the university garden, Elena found a quiet moment alone with Alexander. "I'm so proud of you, Dr. Hayes," he said, taking her hands in his eyes shining with love. "Dr. Hayes," Elena smiled, still not quite accustomed to the new title. "I wouldn't have made it without you." "We both know that's not true," Alexander responded, his voice gentle. "You would have achieved it anyway. It just would have taken longer. And," he added with a playful grin, "a lot more late-night coffee." Alexander suddenly grew serious, his expression softening. "There's something I want to ask you," he began, his voice a little hoarse. Elena's heart skipped a beat as she saw him reach into his jacket pocket and pull out a small velvet box. "Elena Hayes," he said, kneeling before her, his eyes filled with an undeniable, profound love. "You have transformed my life in ways I never thought possible. You have taught me the true value of perseverance, compassion, and unconditional love. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of marrying me?" As he opened the box, Elena saw a beautiful sapphire ring, surrounded by tiny, glittering diamonds. "It's the same ring my father gave my mother," Alexander explained, his voice thick with emotion. "She insisted I have it. For you." Tears welled in Elena's eyes as she extended her trembling hand. "Yes," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I want to marry you." As Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger, Elena thought of the long, arduous path she had traveled, from that first, unexpected encounter in the silent kitchen of his opulent mansion. She never would have imagined then that that single, stolen moment would change the course of her life so profoundly, so beautifully. A few feet away, Mariana and Mercedes observed the scene with knowing, complicit smiles. "I always knew they'd end up together," Mariana commented, her eyes shining. "Me too," Mercedes responded, her voice filled with a quiet satisfaction. "From the moment I met her, I knew she was exactly what my son needed. Someone to challenge him, to inspire him to be better." Dr. Ramirez approached them, a champagne flute in his hand. "Has he told her yet?" he asked, his eyes twinkling. Mercedes nodded. It was about time. Told me what? Mariana asked, confused. About the clinic, Dr. Ramirez explained. Alexander has been working on it for months. A community clinic in Dorchester, the neighborhood where you grew up. He wants Elena to direct it when she returns from her specialization in Madrid. Mariana looked with surprise towards the couple, who were now approaching them, their faces radiant with happiness. It seems we have two things to celebrate, Alexander said, wrapping his arm around Elena's waist. Did you tell her yet? She asked, her eyes sparkling. I wanted it to be a surprise for everyone, he responded, turning to the group. Elena has been accepted to do her specialization in pediatric surgery in Madrid, and I've decided to permanently relocate the company's European headquarters there. We're leaving together next month. Hugs and congratulations erupted. Amidst the joyous celebration, Elena looked around, marveling at how life had so beautifully, so unexpectedly, interwoven her path with those of these people who were now, undeniably, her family. What are you thinking about? Alexander asked, noticing her reflective gaze. About bridges, she responded, her voice soft. About how sometimes people enter our lives in the most unexpected ways and build bridges between worlds that once seemed irreconcilable. Like a billionaire and his determined employee? He asked with a tender smile. Like two people who had the courage to see beyond labels and circumstances. She corrected, her own smile radiant. As the sun began to set over Boston, painting the sky in breathtaking hues of rose and gold, Elena thought of her parents, of how her father had always told her to study, that knowledge was the key that would open all doors, of how her mother had taught her never to lose her dignity, no matter how difficult the circumstances. Somehow, she felt they were there, sharing her happiness, proud of the path she had traveled and the future that was about to begin. Ready for our new adventure? Alexander asked as if reading her thoughts. Elena looked at the ring on her finger, a symbol not only of her profound love for Alexander but also of everything they had overcome together. The prejudices, the social differences, the expectations of others. Ready, she responded with unwavering conviction. More than ever. And as they joined the rest of the group, Elena understood that true wealth wasn't found in material possessions or prestigious titles, but in the capacity to dream, to persevere, and above all, to love without conditions. A lesson she had, ironically, learned thanks to a reclusive billionaire who had found his unassuming employee studying late one night, discovered her secret, and, in doing so, irrevocably changed both their lives, forever. This powerful story of Elena and Alexander reminds us that love can blossom in the most unexpected places, and that with courage, determination, and a willingness to see beyond the surface, we can overcome any obstacle and build a future filled with shared dreams and profound happiness. If their journey touched your heart, if you believe in the transformative power of second chances and the enduring strength of the human spirit, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a dose of inspiration, and comment below with your favorite moment from their incredible story. And of course, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that celebrate the resilience of the human heart. We'd also love to know, where are you watching this story from today? Your voices, your experiences, enrich our global community.